Hiya guys, Nigel here with you. Part 18 now of the Big Bad Buff build for beginners. Yeah, I got it right again. And here you can see we've got our wings in black prime or black paint, and gone around and done a few little touch-ups and bits and pieces and stuff. And basically, yeah, we're ready to move on now and start getting some painting done. As you can see, we're painting the wings off the aircraft. We're not going to do the whole wing, we're just going to do the actual paint, you know, the detail painting and stuff, to avoid us having to do it all when we're trying to handle the whole thing, because it's huge. This is part 18, as I say. Part 17 is ready to go out, and 16 went out last night. Somebody called Sprue Glue made a nice comment on my video, asking could I wash my hands. Well, I'll just say this to you. You're called Sprue Glue Addict or something is your name, so obviously you enjoy plastic scale modelling. If you can watch a series of videos that have had hours and hours and hours of work put into them, and the only comment you can make is can you please wash your hands, I suggest in future you don't bother, because it's not appreciated, it's not funny, it's not clever, there's absolutely no point in writing it. My hands are quite dirty, yes, you can see I've got a dirty finger here. If you didn't know, I'm restoring a Land Rover, so that's quite a dirty job. So you do get some grease and grime ground into the skin. I bite my nails, which is disgusting, and I apologise for on nearly every video I make. But yeah, if I go and wash my hands, it will make absolutely no difference whatsoever. Also, I've got a load of resin on here because I've been making resin parts for the B-52s, as you can see there. So yeah, I'm not going to wash my hands, and if that's all you can say, then I suggest you don't bother watching anymore. So, right, I also like to say thank you very much to everybody, the many hundreds of people who have made some very, very positive comments about this build, and the many hundreds of people who've actually subscribed because of this build. You're obviously greatly enjoying it, and I guess it's kind of nice to see it's a bit of a dog of a kit. It's old, you know, and I guess it's nice to see something this old come together. But it just shows you, doesn't it, that this old dog of a kit, as I call it, it's still, you know, shape-wise and dimensionally the most accurate model B-52 out there, which is crazy to think, isn't it, in this day and age. And as I think I've said before, I think this was probably developed by a guy, an artist with some passion, that, you know, carved all this out of wood or something to get the original shapes, and then they modelled it from there. I don't know, but these days it's all done on CAD, and I notice some people ask me why don't I do this on CAD and 3D print it, my corrections and stuff, and often the answer is the reason I'm making my corrections, like this nose, is because the original was done on a CAD, and unfortunately, if you're not an artist or a sculptor, then getting the exact shapes of the actual real thing are very, very difficult to do with a computer. So there we go. So what we're going to do now is move along, and first thing I want to do is get these bays here painted, the undercarriage bays and the flat bays. We're going to get them done, and then we can get them clear coated and masked off. We're also going to be spraying this area on the back of the engines here, which is going to be like a silver colour. And then we can get that masked off, but we'll do that after we've done the engines and everything. And we also want to paint the intakes and the exhausts, and then we can mask them up and do all the camouflage and everything on the top of the engines, and then we can mask the engines up before we do any more spraying. So that's the general plan of action for today. Now, normally if you're doing something like this, if you want to add some effects, you would do pre-shading. And pre-shading is basically where you come with your airbrush and you would highlight all these lines with black paint. So say you said the plastic was grey, or you had grey primer on there, you would highlight the areas, okay, with black lines where you want the pre-shading to be. So and then when you spray it, you would have a sort of darkening shadow effect around each of the raised areas. Now, it's inaccurate, it's not at all realistic, but it is artistic, and it does add a lot of depth to the actual area. So we'll do that now just as an experiment. Now, obviously, this is black, so I can't do it. So what I'm going to do is shade the other way around. I'm going to put white in between the lines. So we'll have a white area well, you'll see in a minute, we'll have a white area where it's not highlighted, and then when we spray the actual, I'm going to use the XF2 white, and then I'm going to use the XF4 green yellow, which is a zinc chromate colour, over the top. And before anybody says that's not the correct colour for zinc chromate, well, go and look at how zinc chromate is made. So there we go. So that's what we're going to do now. So I'll get some white paint mixed up in the airbrush, and then we'll start doing the bits and pieces. So that's the sort of thing we're talking about. We're going to get this faded, it's a faded look, and it's going to basically give it a little bit of artistic license, and then when we put a wash in there afterwards, it's going to really bring it to life. So basically I've got a XF2 Tamiya white in here. It's about 70, well about 80% thinners, I guess, so very, very thin. And all we're going to do is go into the area where we want to highlight and basically spray and highlight the area in the centre. So right in there, we'll do it in there, a bit in there. Pressure's up on about 22. It's, if anything, it's a little bit high. Just going to wind it down. That's about 18. So just blow any dust off or anything first, and then just go in, and we'll just start here. We just highlight the area where we want the white to be, in between there, on the top edge of there, and then get down a bit in there, up into that area there. And then you could come in the centre and go a little bit heavier, just to make it heavier in the middle of the areas like that. And then go into the middle of there. And the reason you thin the paint so much is so that you can basically work with it. So when you start, if you spitting there, sorry, when you start, if you're off to one side, the paint is so thin it hardly notices. So you can start to spray and then get a feel for where you are and go from there. I've got the airbrush about, I don't know, 3 inches away. Nothing too close. And there we go. And then when we come to do the zinc chromate, you'll see what a massive difference it'll make to the general look. So I'll get the other wing done, and then I'll come back and we'll do some zinc chromate. Okay, both done, both got the pre-shading done. So now we're going to move on to our zinc chromate. I put a video out the other day talking about the airbrushing and the mixtures of paint and everything, and video for Ron it was called. Well, this one's for Ron, and everybody loved it. So basically I'm just going to give you another little thing about airbrushing now. As you can see in there, I've tipped out the white paint, put it back in the pot, and I've done nothing about cleaning the airbrush at all. So I've got my piece of paper towel here, just blow the white paint through. That's that job done. Okay, grab a pipette, take out some of the extra colour, Mr. Colour levelling thinners. Okay, grab my paper towel, hold it over the nozzle, blow back, and then just blow that thinners into there. Okay, and that's as much cleaning as I'm going to do. I'm not interested in cleaning the airbrush one iota. So put some Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners in there, put the top back on, and I'm going to make up quite a thin mix. So we use my Tamiya XF4, get a paintbrush. Okay, and I think we're probably off camera over here, but just going to put some of the XF4, nice thin mix. This will probably be about 70-30, 70% thinners, 30% paint. Just mix that around in the cup. Okay, put the brush down, put the airbrush in the holder, shut the lid. Always put the lids back on things, and then I'm just going to put my finger over the end of the nozzle and just give a quick blast like that. That's just all you do. The reason for that is when you put the thinners in first, and you always, if you're going to mix in the cup, always put the thinners in first, and then what happens is the thinners will run right down to the needle, and then when you put the paint in, the paint will sit on top and it won't mix with it. So what you do is you put your finger over the end of there, and what that's doing is blowing the air out of the airbrush and back up the needle, back up into the paint pot. And what that's doing is it's just allowing the paint to flow around the needle rather than just having thinners. So with your paper towel, just do a little check. Yeah, we've got the paint coming through. So now we can come along to here and just very lightly start applying the paint. I'm going to go in nice and light first of all. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of this and then I'm going to go off camera because obviously I can't have a mask on and talk to you guys at the same time. I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll put a mask on, I'll play a bit of music or something, or just not talk. And there you go, you can see the effect now. You've got the, you know, the shading all around those structures. It just gives it a bit of life rather than just having it as, you know, just that colour. It's got some life to it. It's got some shadowing. There's some tonal differences. You've got the white shining through, you know, and once that's had a wash, it'll look really, really good. I've run out of paint, so you can see I had the paint so thin that basically, you know, it looks like you're using a lot of paint, but you're not, it's just thinners. But basically, I keep the paint very, very thin to get this effect. If you go for like a 50-50 mix and paint it, you'll lose the effect straight away. When you're doing pre-shading work, so whether I've done the pre-shading with the black in here or as I did with the white in between, you want to be having that just show through the paint. So basically start off with a really thin paint and just build it up until that effect, you've got the effect you want. If you go straight in with a too thick a mix, you just cover it up. So that's my advice. And as this is a beginner's build, it's what advice is what it's all about, should I say. So I'll get the rest done now, exactly the same, off camera, and then I'll come back and we'll look at doing something else. Okay, so they're all done now, both wings done. Just to follow on from my airbrush thing, this is the same piece of towel I use, which has also now got resin on it, so it's a bit wrinkly. So basically, yeah, cleaning the airbrush, this is how I do it. And if you want to follow along with me, you'll end up with the same results as I get. Make sure you haven't got any model parts around, just in case you spill or splash anything. So basically what I do, I keep a bottle here, this is an old bottle, of dirty thinners. And what I do with this, I will take some in a pipette, and I use the same pipette for everything. Okay, and I'll put that in there. All right, we'll stand that over there. We'll take our paintbrush that we use to mix our paint, and this will also clean the paintbrush for us. And I'm just going to run around here with the paintbrush and just clean up any excess of paint. Okay, like so, and then we can get the cloth and just wipe around the outside there where it was spilt, and then I'm going to pour this back in. Alright, so that's that cleaned out, and then what we can do is get a cotton bud. Don't push the cotton bud down inside, just go around the top. Okay, and that just remove the excess paint from the cup. Don't push it down inside, you might bend your needle, and also these can be quite fluffy and you might get hair stuck down in there. So that's that. Okay, chuck that away, you're not going to use that again. And then blow through what's in there. Alright, the reason I don't do that and then blow it through is all you're doing is all the crap that was in the cup, you're just taking it down around your needle, so you're better off not blowing that through. Then, with some clean thinners, okay, again I use the same pipette because I'm not that fussy, just drop some clean thinners in there, swirl that round, alright, and then finger over the end, blow that through, and that's basically agitating everything that's in around the needle. Blow that through. The other thing I often do, cotton bud, okay, wet it with thinners, and with the trigger pulled back to get the needle out of the way, I just go in the end and just do that. Okay, and that just removes any build-up you've got in there. Obviously, when I did the last thing I did with the airbrush was the airbrush video, I didn't clean the end of the nozzle out, so you can see all the green that's on there. That's what gets built up. So pull it back, okay, and you can see the amount of rubbish that's in there. But it doesn't matter because it doesn't affect the workings of the airbrush. Now, again, message for Ron, I've noticed every time he cleans his airbrush, he strips it right down, and it's not a good thing to keep doing. What you can do, as a minimum, if you want to, is take the needle out and just with a wet, where it's wet with thinners, just wipe the needle, okay, and then put the needle back in. If you keep stripping your airbrush down, you'll wear the threads out because it is all brass basically, and you know, I've taken the nozzle out of here probably 4 or 5 times in the 10 years I've had it, so I don't worry about doing that. And if you really just want to make sure it is clean, and this is the beauty of this Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners, it is quite hot, so it will burn away any paint that's in there. Just give it another blow back, blow it through, and you can see that it's clear. I can spray it on there, you can see what's coming out of there is clear, there's no colour to it at all, so it's clean. And there we go, I haven't stripped it down at all. The next thing I want to look at is painting this area here on the back of the engines. Now these were like the back of a Phantom, they're just sort of, I don't know, titanium or whatever, titanium stainless steel. So we're going to paint them with like a sort of metallic colour and then mask them off, and then we'll paint the jet exhaust, mask them off, and paint the intakes, mask them off, and then we'll paint the engines. So first of all, to get a metallic colour on there, I'm not really sure what colour I'm going to use yet. I'm probably going to use an alclad polished aluminium, or maybe I'll use the Vallejo steel. But first of all, I want to give them a bit of a gloss. Now I could go over the gloss varnish, but I think a gloss varnish would take longer to dry. So what I'm going to use is this Tamiya X1, which is a gloss black, and it's a very nice paint actually. It goes down very nicely, and it's fairly quick drying. So what I'll do is just blow the airbrush through. Now I haven't got prepared properly at all, so I'm going to get some thinners in a pipette, and we're going to put some Mr. Colour leveling thinners in the airbrush. You can see how much I'm putting in. I don't need a lot. Okay, and then I'm going to use a paintbrush and get some paint from the jar and put it into the airbrush. Again, we're going black over black, so it doesn't need to be particularly thick. Make it quite thin, it will dry faster. There we go, that's probably about 70-30 again. And as I say so many times, because I know that the comments are just going to roll in, I tend to not be at all scientific with airbrushing. I think some people get way over the top with it, and I don't. I have sprayed quite a few cars in my time. If you're watching my Land Rover restoration project over on my other channel, then you'll see that I do a lot of spraying work and welding and painting and all sorts of stuff. So, you know, it's not a science. This is more an art, really, and you don't hear artists talking about, you know, exact mixes for this, that and the other. It's all about you know, getting the finish you're after. So basically just blow that back through like I said before, just to make sure there's no just neat thinners left in the nozzle. And then what we're going to do is just literally come in. In fact, I think what I'll do is put a piece of paper towel down to save me ruining this workbench. So we'll come along and we'll just check our flow. And just get some gloss black paint on there. Spraying gloss is a whole new world. Now my airbrushes, do you hear that? You kind of have to make sure you lay it down wet. You don't want it to be all powdery. You want to get it down wet, but you don't want so much that it all curtains and sags. So you can see that I'll come along here. You can see I'm laying it down wet so you get a gloss straight away. And you'll see that as it dries, it starts to lose some of its shine. But it will start to dry quite quickly. So do the same on here. Okay, so we can just leave that to just start to tack off. And then you can see on this one it's started to dull down, it's getting more of a semi-gloss finish, so we just go over again, lay down some more gloss, keeping it nice and wet. There we go, and it's going to lose some of its sheen, but that doesn't really matter. There we go, I think we can call that a day. I've got some dust in the paint on there as well, I've just noticed, so I'm going to have to give them a sand down and then give them another coat, because that'll stick out like a sore thumb when you put the metallic on. So you can see this one's okay, but this one's got some dust in it and that one's got some dust in it. Probably dust we picked up in the garage when we sprayed the black, so we'll have to start again with that. I have to sand those down and then I'll redo them. So I'll let this dry, I'll get those sanded down, redo them, and then I'll come back so we're basically at the same stage. So I'll see you in a few seconds, but for me it's going to be like maybe a day. Right, so there we go, the black is dried off, then that's another coat on there. And I've basically got some masking tape roughly on here because I don't want to get metallic colours on here, because sometimes they're quite difficult to cover up. With this already being black, we're going to be using some very thin paints to get our shading effects on the black and everything, so that's what I'm just covering up the wing. Now for this I've decided I'm going to use Alclad. Now Alclad 2, they are lacquers, they absolutely stink, so I'll do a little bit on camera and then I'll do the rest off because I want to get my mask on and get it in the booth. But basically they are, as you can see, they are very thin paints, and a lot of people don't rate them. I do. I think they're absolutely awesome. If you want to see the chrome work really well, go back and look at my Saturn V build and look at when I did the command module, and it really does look like real. We could use either of these two. These are the Model Air, aluminium or steel. We could use either of them two, but these are an actual paint. This is more like a coating. So with the gloss black, you use the gloss black to get the look, and when we spray this, you'll see what I mean. These would just cover the gloss black because they're a paint. They're much more heavily pigmented than this one. You've also got these here. So we've got extreme metal from AK, aluminium, and I've got the chrome here from Vallejo. I used to have the Vallejo aluminium, and I did a video on it. It would never ever dry. So, and then a couple of people have come to me and said they've had the same issues. So I think this is very sensitive to temperature. Apparently, if it goes in an aircraft in the hold and it gets cold, apparently it kills it. So I don't know if that's true or not. Now, the AK Extreme is very, very good. But one thing I don't like about it is it's an enamel product. So when you come to do your washes and stuff, you need to be very, very careful with it. So I tend not to use it. I've got the aluminium and I've got the polished aluminium, but I tend not to use them. So I may give them away one day. But I'm going to use these. I love them. As I say, the only downside to them is they absolutely stink. So I'm going to put a drop in the airbrush over here. I'm not going to do it on camera because I'm worried that the bottles are very small and very easy to knock over. So I'm going to be careful not to knock the bottle over. So I'm going to get my pipette and I'm going to take some of the paint out of the jar and put it into my airbrush. Okay, now bear in mind when you look at this jar, look at the colour of the paint that's in there. Okay, so there's the paint in the airbrush. Just going to give it a little blow back, and then over here I'm just going to do a little tester. Okay, now you put this on very, very lightly. You don't pile this on, you put it on really, really thin. So what I'm going to do is just very lightly spray this on and you watch what happens. So you can see there's a very thin coat, and already we've got this sort of chrome kind of look to it. As I say, this is the stainless steel, and if you pile it on, you'll lose the metallic effect. So you put it on very, very thin, and you end up with this kind of, it looks like a plated look to it. Okay, you can see we've got some dust in it, unfortunately, but never mind. But you've got that sort of plated metal look to it rather than just being a silver colour. You can see it's got, if I put my finger by it, you've got reflection in it. It's like a mirror. Okay, so that's the really good thing about it. So I'll get the rest done off camera because it stinks, and then I'll come back and I'm going to put some of this on as well. This is airframe aluminium, just to try and add a bit of effect. Right, so there we go. The black is dried off. Then that's another coat on there, and I've basically got some masking tape roughly on here because I don't want to get metallic colours on here because sometimes they're quite difficult to cover up. With this already being black, we're going to be using some very thin paints to get our shading effects on the black and everything. So that's what I'm just covering up the wing. Now for this, I've decided I'm going to use Alclad. Now Alclad 2, they are lacquers. They absolutely stink. So I'll do a little bit on camera and then I'll do the rest off because I want to get my mask on and get it in the booth. But basically, they, as you can see, they are very, very thin paints, and a lot of people don't rate them. I do. I think they're absolutely awesome. If you want to see the chrome work really well, go back and look at my Saturn V build and look at when I did the command module, and it really does look like real. We could use either of these two. These are the Model Air, aluminium or steel. We could use either of them two, but these are an actual paint. This is more like a coating. So with the gloss black, you use the gloss black to get the look, and when we spray this, you'll see what I mean. These would just cover the gloss black because they're a paint. They're much more heavily pigmented than this one. You've also got these here. So we've got extreme metal from AK, aluminium, and I've got the chrome here from Vallejo. I used to have the Vallejo aluminium, and I did a video on it. It would never ever dry. So, and then a couple of people have gone to me and said they've had the same issues. So I think this is very sensitive to temperature. Apparently, if it goes in an aircraft in the hold and it gets cold, apparently it kills it. So I don't know if that's true or not. Now, the AK Extreme is very, very good, but one thing I don't like about it is it's an enamel product. So when you come to do your washes and stuff, you need to be very, very careful with it. So I tend not to use it. I've got the aluminium and I've got the polished aluminium, but I tend not to use them. So I may give them away one day, but I'm going to use these. I love them. As I say, the only downside to them is they absolutely stink. So I'm going to put a drop in the airbrush over here. I'm not going to do it on camera because I'm worried that the bottles are very small and very easy to knock over. So I'm going to be careful not to knock the bottle over. So I'm going to get my pipette and I'm going to take some of the paint out of the jar and put it into my airbrush. Okay, now bear in mind, when you look at this jar, look at the colour of the paint that's in there, okay? So there's the paint in the airbrush. Just going to give it a little blow back. And then over here, I'm just going to do a little tester. Okay? Now you put this on very, very lightly. You don't pile this on. You put it on really, really thin. So what I'm going to do is just very lightly spray this on and you watch what happens. So you can see there's a very thin coat and already we've got this sort of chrome kind of look to it. As I say, this is the stainless steel, and if you pile it on, you'll lose the metallic effect. So you put it on very, very thin, and you end up with this kind of, it looks like a plated look to it. Okay? You can see we've got some dust in it, unfortunately, but never mind. But you've got that sort of plated metal look to it rather than just being a silver colour. You can see it's got, if I put my finger by it, you've got reflection in it. It's like a mirror. Okay, so that's the really good thing about it. So I'll get the rest done off camera because it stinks, and then I'll come back and I'm going to put some of this on as well. This is airframe aluminium, just to try and add a bit of effect. And there we go. So you can see that's gone off a bit brighter now. What I've done, I've just come over. This is the Alclad polished aluminium now. Number ALC 119, and basically what I'm doing is just basically very, very lightly dusting over the stainless steel randomly, and it just gives it a bit of a different look. I doubt you can see it on the camera, but it does get a bit of a kind of, no, you can't see it on the camera, I'm looking through now, and it gives it a kind of mottled metallic look. It just adds a bit more interest. So we can take all this tape off now, and we can move on to the next stage. The other beauty of this Alclad is it's very quick drying. Now, I'm not going to do anything more with it right now because the gloss black underneath wasn't fully hardened. It was slightly soft. So I'm not going to do any more with that now. I'm just going to leave that and let that go off, and then we'll come back and do some more work to it later. But you can see we've got that lovely metallic finish on there now that is reflective, and yeah, and we'll put a clear coat on it once it's dry. We'll get some aqua gloss on there, which is this one here, Alclad 2 again, aqua gloss. This stuff, you do not shake it, you do not stir it, you just pour it in the airbrush, spray it, and then pour back what you don't use. That's what I do with it. So we're going to use that over the top. The beauty of that stuff is it doesn't kill your metal effects. Here we are, 24 hours later, and the paint, the silver paint that I put on there has had it, or the stainless steel has had a clear coat left to dry. The Alclad aqua gloss from Alclad, there we go, and I've also given these wing flap areas a coat of aqua gloss as well. We can see in here we've got some sanding marks, which is something to be careful of. I'm not going to worry about it because the whole area is a bit of a mess anyway, with all the ejector pin marks and the funny shapes and everything, so I'm just going to leave those, but normally I would sand those out. You can see here that I've masked off the areas where the bright metal is, and basically I'm going to be spraying the exhaust now with Alclad 2 jet exhaust, and this is a great colour. You'll see in a minute, it's like a sort of browny grey metallic black colour. It's fantastic. So I'm going to paint that into there. I'll show you doing that, and then basically I'll be able to use some blue tack or something to mask all that up, and then we can paint the bottoms of the engines. Okay, so just going to come down here and literally just lightly paint that area in there. Make sure we get all around the cones. God, it stinks, this stuff. It really does smell bad. So, risking life and limb for you guys. Hey, what sort of a hero am I? Right. There we go. Easy as that. And you can see I've used hardly any paint. And then in a minute when I unmask it, you'll see how good that looks up against the silver. And there we go. All done. All looking dandy. And I also did the intakes with it because I had some left in the airbrush. I thought I'll do the intakes with it as well. And because they've got a kind of metallic-y look, and as you can see, it looks quite effective. So jet exhaust on the intakes as well, guys. There we go. So we'll do some dry brushing and some chipping on them, because it's, look, every B52D I've seen, they kind of have all this chipping on there and everything. So we're just going to give that a few minutes to dry off, and then we'll cover those cones up, and then I want to spray the bottoms of these engines in the finished colour for our black, and we'll do some shading and stuff on there and go from there. So let that dry for a minute, and then I'll be back with some black paint. Okay, so I said we're going to do the engines black on the bottoms first. How silly of me. We're going to do the tops first. We'll do the camouflage first, because what I want to do, I'm looking at reference pictures. This is our camouflage here. Be very careful with your camouflage. If you've got this book here, you may wish to use the camouflage guide in here, which shows the camouflage of a B52D. There we go there. It's all wrong. So I've looked at reference pictures, and it would appear that these are correct and this is actually incorrect. You can see here they've got a large thick green stripe going across here, across the the leading edge of the wing, across the fuselage, and they haven't got that there. And when you actually look at pictures of the real thing, it would appear that the monogram instructions are correct. If I can find it quickly, there is a picture here of a D. There we go. And we haven't got that big thick green band going across here. We've got the green band as it's shown there. So basically I would stick with the Revell monogram instructions. I assume the Revell instructions will be the same as the monogram. Yes, so very, very similar. When we look at the Revell instructions, the actual camouflage scheme there is very, very similar indeed. But it wouldn't, they would not have been all exactly the same anyway. So, but this is certainly a lot closer than the one that's in the Squadron Signal book. So basically stick to that and you'll be okay. Or if you've got the Revell kit, stick to that and you'll be okay. So basically weapons pylons are all black. Wing tanks, as you can see, follow the, I've got a frog in my throat this morning. Follow the camouflage on the top. We've got some, this is going to be all dark green. This is going to be the brown and the, what's that? Is that the darker green? I can't remember now. But you've got the two shades of green and the brown basically, and we're going to be using these. So we can see here, that engine there is going to be 159, which is the, here we go, the green there, it's like the grey green. Okay, and then this one here is going to be the tan, which is the 342201. Hang on, 34201, the tan colour, and then the darker green, which is 34079 here. Okay, so basically we're going to use this one, this one, this one, and this one. 34079, sorry, we're not using 102. This is the problem. You've got to be careful. 201 and 102, you could easily get them mixed up, but they're totally different colours. So 201, 159 and 079, and we're also going to use some of the black as well. I just hope we got enough paint in these to do the whole model. If not, we can use some different colours. And I'm going to sort of do some weathering in this and really knock it back and make it look well used anyway. So I think you'll enjoy that. So let's get on and get some painting done on the tops of our engines. We don't need to do any masking for this. We only need to do masking when it comes to doing the black. Okay, so I've got my three colours here. Got the 34201, 34079 and 34159, which are the three upper camouflage colours from the Model Air set, as I showed you just now. Now, one of the biggest problems with Viejo paint, one of the many problems with Viejo paint, the pigments get stuck in the bottom. You can see this has been lead on its side, and you can't see it so much on that one. You can see it on this one where you've got the yellowing around here where it's been sat on its side. So all the pigment, all the paint is actually all stuck to the side of the bottle. And because the bottle's practically full of paint, when you shake it, you don't get much movement. So it needs to be agitated. So here I've got a bag of ceramic balls. Now, in my last job, we had a couple of machines that were very bearing hungry. So we did a trial with ceramic balls, ceramic bearing races, and they didn't work either. So when they came out, I kept them, smashed them up and kept the balls. And the reason I've done that is because they obviously won't corrode. You need to be very careful with if you're using ball bearings in your paint, because even if you use stainless steel, some stainless steels will rust. In fact, a few of them will rust. So you need to be very careful. That rag there is absolutely soaked in resin, so it's no use to man or beast. So with these Viejo paints, you can just pull the cap off like so. Put that one down. Okay, and then we can take, I should have got the ball bearings out first. Oh, come on. So we can take a ball bearing, take a smaller one, just drop it in there, put the cap back on, okay, put the lid back on, and now you've got a ball bearing in there which will run around and agitate everything and help to get these dregs off of the corners. I've also got one of these. This is the Badger paint stirrer, which is a great little tool, but unfortunately the head's slightly too big to go in the bottle. I keep meaning to get on the lathe and make a new head for it, for well, lathe and the milling machine, and make a new head that will fit down in. But I don't use Viejo paints a lot, to be honest. I don't really rate them, but I thought I'd give these a go because it's a beginner's video, and a lot of you are going to be looking for paints that you can use that aren't toxic. So I could go down the Tamiya Mr. Colour route and the Mr. Colour paints and the Mr. Colour thinners and all that, or even start using some lacquers, the Mr. Paint but MRPs, but they're really not very nice, especially if you're working in the kitchen at home. So that's why I thought I'd try these. So do the same again with these. Get the caps off. Just get a rag, wipe the cap, grab it, pull it out. Okay, get a ball, chuck a ball in, get your cap, job done. I'm listening out for aircraft. I had an absolute fantastic hour and a half, about an hour maybe yesterday afternoon. I heard noises in the skies. I looked up and I saw two B-52s flying in formation, and they just went round and round in circles over Gloucestershire for about an hour and a half, and it was incredible. And unfortunately there were some thick black clouds, and every time they went north and then turned south to come back to me, they'd kind of come, say I was here, they were kind of doing this kind of route. And as they get to here to come round, I get a perfect shot of them coming out under the wings. This black cloud would move in, and there were like 3 or 4 of them. But there was 1 or 2 loops they did, and I managed to get some lovely shots with an iPhone camera. So I say lovely shots, they're pretty awful, but you can see it's a B-52 because of the massive swept wing. But yeah, I was absolutely made up. So anyway, that's those done. So we'll give those a good shake up now, and then we'll get on and do some painting. Right, time to start doing some painting. So I'm going to do some trials first with this crappy old wing. This is what I used for my airbrushing trials. If you are new to airbrushing, you didn't see it, I've done this video. It's called This One's for Ron, and I've added, by the suggestion of one of my viewers, I've added to the end of it airbrushing for beginners or something. Go back and have a look. The image is a picture of HMS Hood, so have a look on that and you'll see that video, and I think you'll enjoy it. It shows the different finishes you can get. So I don't use this very much, so I'm going to thin it. I'm going to try it first with some thinners. I've cleaned the airbrush with Viejo thinners. I think Viejo thinners and UMP are about the only thinners you can use with Viejo. So be very careful. If you start putting some thinners in it, it'll turn to cottage cheese. So I've got some thinners there in the airbrush. I'm just going to add 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm not going to be a drop counter. Just going to get some paint in there. Okay, so put that airbrush back over there. Put the lid back on this one. And you can do this to stir it. Put your finger over the end and that will stir it, or you can use a brush like I want to here, and you can see we've got a very, very thin mix. Where's my rag? Here it is. I'm not very well organised today, guys. I seem to be a bit of a scatterhead. So just do a check the flow. Yep, we've got some flow, so let's see how it goes down. Very, very thin. It smells very, very sweet. It smells like a fresh bag of candy. There we go, that's going down very nicely. Just cut to air, dry that out a bit. Yeah, so maybe a little too thin. Maybe I should have put slightly less thinners in. I could put some more paint in, but no point. But there we go. So let's try again using less paint this time. Let's just lay it down a bit thinner. There we go, it's really thin now. So see, building it up slowly, and this is how we're going to get our worn mottled effect, is by building the colour up and letting the black show through. And we can do some post shading with stuff. We can put, lighten it slightly and just lighten the tops where the sun's been at it. But basically you can see the two different colours there straight away. And I'm just going to show you something else while we're here. When it comes to camouflage, some camouflage has a soft edge, some of it has a hard edge, and some of it's kind of in between. And this one I think is kind of in between. So with this one we're going to use blue tack sausages to mask our edge. And I'll show you that when we come to it, but I'll use white tack. Actually, I'm going to have to go and buy some white tack because I've run out. But basically, if you're doing a soft camo, you can use the airbrush as is. Just do your line like that and then go over the line again. Okay, and just lay it down like so. And then you can fill in like so and do your colours like that. If you want to get a sharper line, if you take the tip off of your airbrush, whoops, whole thing's coming off there. If you take the tip off your airbrush, be careful not to hit the needle. You can see there we've got just the needle exposed, and you can come in really close. This probably isn't the best to show you because the paint's so thin, but you can come in really close and you can get a very, very sharp, very, very fine edge. Okay, and you can come in like literally a few millimeters from the surface. But you need to be careful because this will happen. You don't want that. Okay, because I've got the paint so thin, there you go. And some airbrushes have an end stop on them, like this thing here, this cheap Chinese airbrush. This has got an end stop on it here, so what you do is you set that, you turn that in, and it only lets you pull it back so far. Okay, so that's a good way to prevent you getting that happening. You can set that to where you can. You could just go back and pull back to your stop, and you know you're not going to get too much paint. This one doesn't have that. My other Iwata does. To be honest, I think this paint is a little too thin, but basically just to show you, you can get very, very fine, very, very fine lines by removing the tip. Okay, it's getting even finer than that. This paint is too thin. I'm going to have to add some more paint to it. I'm going to cut the camera, change the paint, and go from there. The paint's a bit thicker now, and we've got the nozzle back on. So I'll just show you. You can come in really close with your nozzle on, and you can get a nice tight faded line. Better if I was doing black over white or something. I think this is drying in the airbrush. There we go. You can see you can get a fairly tight line. Just fill in here. This is clogging in the airbrush. Do you know what? I knew this was a mistake using the Aho paint. We shall see how we get on. So basically you can see I've got nothing coming out now. There we go. I've got the trigger pulled back practically all the way. You can see bubbles on the surface. That generally means we've got a blockage. The air valve is sticking. Get rid of those bubbles. This is good actually because it's showing you some issues, which is good for beginners to see these issues. I've got a feeling this paint is turning. Yes, I've got that's all the way back. Look at that. What horrible paint this is. Awful stuff. Horrible, horrible paint. So it's either too thin that it doesn't cover and it's like water, or if you actually give it some body it doesn't spray, it just clogs up because it's got like a polyurethane in it. I think it's I'm glad I tried it on this wing first. You can see the flow. I'm not moving my fingers. You can see the flow has just disappeared, and then if I go back like this, it's too heavy. So it's going to be okay for filling in, but not very good for freehand camouflage because it just wants to keep drying in the airbrush. The biggest beauty of it is it doesn't smell, so that's one good thing. But there we are. We can see here that we've got the base down there. We can just colour that in. There we go. I think trying to do a faded edge camouflage would be a waste of time unless you have the paint so thin it's like water. Or my brush is contaminated. I don't know. But I'm tempted now not to use this because it's just it's okay showing you how to airbrush, but if I've got a paint that's just rubbish, then we'll give it a go. So anyway, we've got to do our engines. So we've got our starboard wing here. I need to prime it again. Oh Christ. Okay, I'm back after that awful interlude. Right, so I've cleaned the airbrush, I've stripped it all down and cleaned it all thoroughly. Did the black primer. I've also now I've got 30% thinner, so I've got 3 drops of the airbrush thinner to 7 drops of the, in fact that's not 30%, is it? But I've done 3 drops, it's nearly 50-50, 3 drops of that to 10, sorry, 3 drops of this to 10 drops of the other, so it's sort of 10 to 3. So there we go. So let's get these wings done. So I've got the starboard wing here, and as you can see from the, every time I speak I get a frog in my throat. I've got this area here on the front of this wing tank needs to be 34201, and 34201 is the paint we're using, so that's the right colour. So we're just going to paint that, and we can see that when we look at the instructions, when we look here, we can see the pylon is actually black. So we're only going to go from the front of the pylon. We're going to be masking anyway, so we'll go from the front edge of the pylon and we'll come sort of a third of the way down the side. So just checking the flow. It does clog up. You see that then? It didn't want to paint. So we're just going to lay this on here and then go to the other side. Yeah, see the spattering then? That's where the paint is building up on the nozzle. Okay, so we can just get this on here, and you can see I'm putting it on fairly thin so we get a kind of bit of a mottly finish on it. We'll just come down a little bit lower just to make sure. There we go, so that's that one done. Then it's actually not very good for doing the thin effect. I can see me not using this paint on the rest of the model, guys, to be honest. Not happy with it at all. Right, so now on this same wing, we've got this engine here, it's got the tan on it as well, 34201. So we'll do that one, and then we'll add the green afterwards. So the whole engine upper surface, it's going to be this tan colour. Make sure we don't get it down inside the engines, so spray across the front of the engines. There we go. Yeah, it's not very good for the shading at all. It's very it's got a very strong pigment in it. If you thin it out so that it is translucent, it becomes so watery, it runs everywhere. So yeah, not ideal. So there we go. We've got some sort of shading there. You can see there's some blotchiness, which is what I'm after. So that's that engine done. And then over on the other wing, we've just got the one side of the one engine to do. So it's the one side of the outer engine. Trying to get this blotchiness effect, it's very difficult. If this was Tammy or Mr. Hobby or something, I'd mix it with Mr. Colour Leveling Thinners, about 30% paint to 70% thinners, and I would just lay it on very slowly and build it up, and then build up in the centres of the panels and leave the edges dark. But with this, it doesn't feel like it could be done. It's just kind of goes down and builds up, and that's it. But there we go. So there's those done, and that is basically that. We've got the back end of this tank is going to be the 159. That engine there is all 159. That engine there is all 159. So we'll move on to the 159 next. Right, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 drops of thinners. Give the paint a good shake. And then 10 drops of paint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that is one of the beauties of Viejo paint. If you do want to get, you know, your mixtures quite precise and repeatable, you can use the dropper method. But remember, as I said in my beginner video, people who talk about the correct ratios and percentages and stuff, this paint, if it's left on the shelf, it'll get thick. So if I did the same thing with this in a year's time, the mix would actually be thicker. So we can put our finger over the end of the airbrush, give it a blow back, and as you notice, I put a couple of drops of airbrush thinners, blew it through to clear out the old paint, so I haven't worried about thoroughly cleaning the airbrush. So we just do a little test patch. You can see there it was blocked again. You can see it's flowing quite nicely, so I think I'll just test a bit on here first, just in case. Yeah, that's going down okay. So, right then, on this wing, okay, on the port wing, we have got 34159 for the whole top tank, and the back of that top tank, and then both of these engines. So, basically, on this wing, it's the back of this tank. There we go, there's that one done. Shall come a little bit more down the sides, just in case. It's better to come too far than not enough. And then we want to do that whole engine. So going down on top, don't spray like that, you get it in the exhausts. Then when you get to the front, spray down. Just keeping it coming down like so. And then get it on the back. Again, spray across the front. The insides of the engines on the front are black, so don't worry about getting in there. And all the edges are going to be all stone chipped and everything. I do fancy building another one of these, but building a G and having it all beat up with all the miscoloured panels and everything in the PSYOP scheme with a white belly. So watch this space. I may well do that. And I may well do it with all the Edard extras. I've got the Edard photo etch sets now. So there we go. Happy with that. That's actually coming out quite nice. I'm happy with that. It's far nicer paint than the last one. So on this wing, we're going to do the whole top tank and that inner engine again. So, and I'm spitting, sorry. Literally fogging the paint on really thin, letting it build up in layers, no wet areas. And then top of this tank. And if you want to, you can do the black basing method where you build the paint up slowly, but I'm not sure it'll work very well with this paint. But basically what you do is you come in really close, you do these just squiggles and mottles and stuff, and you can build it up that way. And you can see that you can get a very good weathered look on there. But I'm not doing that with this paint because I don't think it'll work very well. I think it just keeps drying in the nozzle. Perhaps I'll show you on one of the tail planes or something. In fact, no, I think we'll save it for another build. I'm out of paint. Look at that. I only want to do that little tiny bit. So what I'm going to do is 1 drop of thinners. And this is the right one, isn't it? 159. Yep. And 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of paint. A little tiny bit thinner. Blow that back. Test the flow. There we are. There we are. Happy with how that's gone. There we go. Yeah, just looking at the plans, and that's basically where we are. So we can see that on here we've got a little bit of a darker area at the back. So maybe I can do this post shading, and just basically what I'm doing now is I'm spraying areas in between the panel lines. Hopefully you can see. Yeah, the paint's run out now. But basically building the paint up in between the panel lines, so you end up with shading around the panel lines. So there we go. So it's about, I don't know, 2 hours later. I've been out, I've got some white tack. I went to McDonald's and got a burger as well, which was really nice. And basically, so now I'm going to show you how to do camouflage with white tack. Now, I think what I might do is do a piece on the scrap wing first, so I can just demonstrate what it is I'm going to do, and then I'll do it and you'll know what I'm doing. So let's get this wing out of the way. Right, so basically there are many different ways. What I'll do is I'll use this old blue tack. I have this old blue tack, and this has been mixed up with white tack, and I'm not very careful with it. You can see it's got bits of silicone in it and all sorts, so I didn't really want to use it for the proper job. But basically, take a ball of this and we'll roll it in our hands and get it nice and warm. Okay, and make it into a sausage. So you can go onto your board and roll it out. Okay, like so. Or you can use a glass jar or something and roll it out. Basically make a sausage. Now the bigger the sausage, yep, the happier she is. The bigger the sausage, there's even a piece of plastic card in there, look. This stuff is years old, I really should replace it. The bigger the sausage, shall I say it again? The bigger the sausage, the softer the edge will be, but you will get a sort of definite edge rather than this sort of faded edge. So what we can do is put this down like this, okay, and make the shape we want. Alright, just like that. And there we go. Now what you do, come along with a piece of paper. I've got loads of scrap paper from cutting out your labels for the parts you've been buying from me. So we come along with a piece of paper, and we can take a pen and we can just see on there where it is and just draw a line sort of basically over where the blue tack goes. Yeah, and then we can cut that out. Oops. Cut that out like so. Okay, and then we can stick this onto the blue tack like that. And now you've got a mask. Now if you use masking tape on the blue tack, this blue tack has had it basically, so it's not very sticky. But basically if you use masking tape on the blue tack, then what will happen is the glue in the masking tape will get into the blue tack, and you may well find you end up having to scrap everything. But I don't think I can get this to stick to this paper. No, it's not gonna, it's had it. So basically what I'll do is I'll put this on the wing, and then you can imagine, use your imagination, imagine I've got paper on it. The only reason the paper's there is to stop the overspray. Okay, so you push that down and you try and keep it nice and even. Now, if you do this, okay, if you have areas that are squashed down and areas that are, I'll show you what happens. So we'll have that area there really tight. So that's really tightly squeezed down. And this area here is all quite loose. Okay, so I'll show you what happens. So what we're going to do is put the, so it's going to be 34079. So we'll put this in the airbrush. Let's get the stand over for the airbrush, get the blue tack out of the way. Okay, and then we're going to put 2 drops of thinners, 1, 2, and 10 drops of paint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. Just like so. I think that was probably off camera, but never mind. And then we'll just glue back up. That mixes it up for us. Just do a trial. You can see that it sprays okay. It's fine. Right. So now there you can see some spatter. Now I think that was probably done when I put paint in the airbrush, but basically if I can show you this spatter thing, so you come along, you spray like this, and then when you come to the next bit, no, it's not going to do it because the camera's on. Right, let's get back to this camouflage. So basically I'm keeping the airbrush 90 degrees to the blue tack. Alright, I'm just spraying like this, and I'm basically using the blue tack as my mask. Okay, so filling the area around it. Always stay in 90 degrees. Okay, if you go like this, you end up with a very, very soft edge. If you go like this, you end up with the paint under the blue tack. So 90 degrees to the blue tack, around the edge like so, and then we can take the blue tack off, and you can see what happens. And you can see here we've got a semi-hard edge. Semi-hard edge, which is what we wanted. Now where I've squeezed it down here, you can see it's a harder edge. Let me just try and get this closer to the camera so you can see what we're talking about. You can see the edge here is harder than it is there. So if you want a hard edge, use a small sausage. If you want a soft edge, you need a big sausage. Okay, now this blue tack has basically had it so it doesn't stick to anything. So that's basically the example. Let's just do another one just to show you again, because if you are new to this, you're probably thinking, wow, that's good. You may have never seen it before. What some people do as well is they take their instructions, scale them up on a scanner, print them off, cut out the shapes, and then use that to do your camouflage. So what I'm going to do here, I'll put my thumb in the paint. I'm going to come along and I'm going to put this on this wing, like so. A bit of silicone stuck in it there. Okay, and then it's not even sticking to the wing, it's so knackered. It's had so many uses. Okay, so keep it even. So you can see the sausage, if you look at it, the sausage is about the same size all the way across. And then we can come along with our airbrush, stay in 90 degrees to the edge, and just go back over that again. You see I'm doing the circles. Once more. Okay, take the blue tack away, and there's your soft edge, and it's even all the way along. And that's the kind of look I'm going for with this, because it looks like scale. That's sort of how it should be. Maybe a little bit harder than that, sort of between that one and that one. So let me get that done, and then I'll come back before I do any painting. Here we go then. So I've got the white tack in here. It's a sausage about, I don't know, 4mm diameter. I've just got it on a piece of paper. It's a bit of masking tape to hold it on the ends. So now we're going to spray this engine, and as you can see on here, we've got the green, the 34079 over this engine. So I've got the tan masked off, as you can see, and we can go in there and paint this green now. So just check our flow. Yep, flow's absolutely fine. Start spraying off the model. Because of this spatter thing, if you we're not getting any spatter at the moment, but if you do get spatter, it's best to start spraying off the model and then move over to it. Okay, so I'm going to go onto the white tack. See how to flood then. This is one of the problems with this Vallejo paint. It's blocking up in the nozzle and then it suddenly floods through. We're going to get down the back of that engine there. It does smell nice though. And as I say, make sure we stay 90 degrees to the blue tack. I'm going to come over here. It's clogging up like a good one, this is. Absolute bloody garbage. Now you probably can't see what I'm doing here, can you? Okay, so there's our green. Making sure we stay away from that blue tack. Alright, so that's that engine done. So we come along now, take that paper away, pull the tape off, and you can see we've got that nice sort of semi-hard line. Okay? And that's what we're looking for. So that's what we're going to do all the way through, is go for sort of, that's about 4mm diameter, and that's what we'll do all the way through. And then what you do, you get this, you screw it up into a ball, roll it out again, and then it's good as new. And you can use it many times, and when it ceases being any good for doing this, then you can use it for holding parts onto a piece of wood, for spraying smaller parts, like I showed you with the undercarriage and everything back in the early parts. So that's that done. Now I need to mask up this engine, which is going to be 2 sausages, and spray that one. And there we go, all masked. And as you can see down here, I'll show you in a minute, this is what happens. I've got tape on the blue tack, and I'll show you what happens. So check our flow, blow the airbrush through, and then again we're going to stay 90 degrees. I'm not worried about the pylon because that's going to be masked and painted black. So I'm just going to get in here, 90 degrees, from the white tack, and then the same here, stay 90 degrees, and then we can just blow in. Like that. Make sure we don't get underneath that blue tack. Just like so. Now the same here, 90 degrees. And there we go. So that's that done. Now I'll quickly rip this off and show you what it looks like. You can see that tape is really stuck to the blue tack, and that's what happens. You get the masking tape on the blue tack, it really sticks to it. So, or the white tack should I say. So yeah, BK, I've got a bit on there as well. Look, you can see how well it absolutely glues itself in. So yeah, if you push too hard on it, it will actually just ruin your white tack. So I'll peel this up from the bottom, be easier, wouldn't it? There we go, peel that one off, and there we go, we've got our soft edge on there now. Okay, so that's the sort of look we're after, that nice soft edge, but it's not that soft that it's like foggy. Okay. Now some people will tell you can use this stuff. Now I've got this is Fun Zone, okay, and you can see this settles like a gel. AK make it and other people make it. It's basically, you can get this in pound shops, it's the same thing. It may be a little bit more oily, but I don't know. I tend to stay away from those things, particularly on detailed models, because what happens with them, as you can see with this, if I leave this blue tack there overnight, when I come back in the morning, that will be like that. If I make this up into a shape, if I can get it out, if I make this up into a shape, it's probably gone off, it's years old. I think you all know what happens if you leave this. Okay, if I come back to that in an hour, that'll be flat again, it settles down. So the problem is, if you're using it like on a tank where you've got grills and handles and hinges and stuff, it will settle down and find its way into it. If they're little PE parts, when you pull it off, it will rip them off. You're far better off, if it's a military vehicle or an area where you've got detailed photo etch and stuff, using these sausages, push them down lightly, and then you can just peel them off afterwards. They won't settle in and sort of grab hold of all your bits and pieces. So there we go. I'm going to let that dry, and then we'll do the black on the pylons and the engines. I'm going to call that a day for this video, purely because I need to get something out, and I keep stopping because this is the problem now. Things are going to slow down until we get the main thing built up. Because while we're doing these little stages of painting, it's sort of now I need to wait for that to dry before I can do the black on the pylons and on the bottom of the engines. I can't do anything else. I can't do anything else with this model at all until that's done. I could move on and start looking at the seams on the fuselage, but I want to save that for another day. So thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon. Hope you've learned something from this. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you don't have VAO paints, maybe not buy them, but honestly, they're great because they don't smell. But you know, you can see here, I mean, I expect this is, I mean, that's about halfway back on the trigger. There's no, there you go, it's starting to come out now. But my fear is it'll start to spit and spray and stuff. So yeah, you can hear it spitting there. The airbrush is struggling to paint it. Just blow it out, get rid of it, and then I'll give the airbrush a good clean. So there we go. Perhaps thin it a little bit more. So there we go. We've done our painting, we've done our camouflage, and there we go. You can see there's that engine there, and there's that engine there with the different colours. So thanks for watching. I'll see you all soon for part 19. Bye for now.